I never imagined the day my husband returned home would be the day everything I built for years would fall apart. Or maybe come full circle. You see, I waited for him for weeks, trusting every word he said, every promise he made about just a short business trip. But when he came back, he wasn't alone. He brought someone else, and not just her, but her entire family. Before I tell you what happened, make sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading what you think, and it truly means the world to me. My name is Rebecca, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes losing everything is the only way to take your life back. When I first met Daniel, I thought I had found my forever. He was charming, thoughtful, and had that quiet kind of confidence that made everyone trust him instantly. For years, we built our lives together. The dream house, the garden, the late-night talks that lasted until dawn. I thought we were solid, unshakable. Then, about 8 months ago, Daniel told me he had to travel for business. It wasn't unusual. His company often sent him abroad for client meetings, but this time felt different. He was distant, distracted. He avoided eye contact when I asked questions, and when I kissed him goodbye at the airport, I swear his body went stiff for a second, like he was forcing himself to act normal. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was just paranoid. Love makes you trust too easily, doesn't it? For weeks, his messages grew shorter. Busy today. We'll call later. Flight delayed. Nothing else. I tried to stay patient, to give him space, but one night, while scrolling through social media, I saw a photo that stopped my heart. Daniel, standing in front of a seaside villa, his arm around a woman I had never seen before. Her smile was wide, her hand resting on his chest, and in the background, there were people who looked like her family, laughing, celebrating, holding champagne glasses. The caption read, "A beautiful trip with beautiful people." At first, I refused to believe it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe she was a client. Maybe I was overthinking. I wanted to call him right away, but my hands were shaking so much that I couldn't even type. He didn't answer my calls that night, or the next, or the next. Days turned into weeks. I barely ate. I barely slept. Every night I sat by our bedroom window, staring at the empty driveway, waiting for his car to return. But it never did. Until one Friday afternoon, nearly 2 months later, I heard the sound of tires crunching on gravel. I looked out the window and there it was, his black SUV. For a moment, relief washed over me. He was home. I thought maybe we'd finally talk, maybe this nightmare would end. But when I walked out to greet him, I froze. Because stepping out of the passenger seat was her. The same woman from the photo, and behind her, her parents, carrying suitcases. "Rebecca," Daniel said softly, avoiding my eyes, "we need to talk." The world tilted beneath me. They walked past me like I was invisible. Her mother smiled politely, her father nodded as if this was some normal family visit. My heart was racing, but I stood there completely numb. Inside the house, Daniel finally turned to me. "Rebecca, I didn't know how to tell you this, but I'm in love with her. I've been seeing her for a while. I didn't plan for it to happen, but it did." I remember my ears ringing. I didn't even process the rest of his words, something about new beginnings and peaceful separation. He had brought her and her family to our home, the one I decorated, cleaned, loved, and poured my soul into for years. That night, I packed a small bag and went to stay with my sister. I couldn't even bear to sleep under the same roof. I didn't cry, not that night. The tears came later, slowly, silently, in the middle of the night when no one could hear me. For days, I replayed everything. Every smile, every trip he took, every late-night meeting. The puzzle pieces fit together now. He had been seeing her for nearly a year. But what Daniel didn't realize was the house wasn't really ours. It was mine. I had inherited it from my parents before we married, and although his name was on the mailbox, legally, it belonged to me. And that's when the idea came to me. I wasn't going to beg him to come back. I wasn't going to fight or scream. I was going to do something far simpler and far more powerful. I called my lawyer the next morning. When Daniel left again for another trip, I didn't say a word. I waited patiently, quietly, while he spent time with her and her family, pretending they were some happy little unit. I signed the documents, listed the house, and within 2 weeks, it was sold to a lovely older couple who wanted to retire by the lake. The morning I handed them the keys, I felt free. But the real satisfaction came 3 days later when Daniel finally came back. He drove up, same black SUV, same smug look on his face, until he saw the moving truck in the driveway. He stepped out, confused. "Rebecca, what's going on?" he asked. I smiled, calm and collected. "Oh, didn't I tell you? I sold the house." His face turned pale. "You... what?" "I sold my house," I said, my voice steady. "The one you and your new family had decided to occupy. I hope you all find somewhere else to stay. Maybe she can buy you one this time." He stood there speechless. The woman's parents exchanged nervous glances. His lover clutched his arm, whispering something, but he didn't move. He just stared at me. For the first time in months, I held the power. I walked away, closing the gate behind me, and as I drove off, watching the house fade into the distance, I realized something. Revenge doesn't always come from anger. Sometimes it comes from peace, from reclaiming what was stolen from you without ever raising your voice. And that peace was priceless. The day after I sold the house, I woke up for the first time in months without that heavy feeling pressing against my chest. I could finally breathe again. The house that once trapped me in memories of betrayal and humiliation was no longer mine to mourn. It felt strange, like cutting off a limb that had long been infected, but still somehow felt like part of me. That morning, I sat in my sister's kitchen, sipping coffee while sunlight streamed through the window. She looked at me quietly for a moment before asking, "Are you sure you're okay, Rebecca?" I nodded, though my throat tightened. "I'm not okay, but I will be." She smiled sadly, and for the first time, I believed those words. I would be okay. Later that day, I decided to visit the house one last time before the new owners moved in, not to dwell, but to say goodbye properly. As I pulled up to the familiar driveway, I noticed Daniel's car was gone. The windows were open, and the faint scent of the lilac candles I used to love drifted through the air. It felt hauntingly peaceful. I walked inside slowly, touching the walls that once held laughter and warmth. Every corner whispered memories. The time he surprised me with roses in the living room, the nights we danced in the kitchen when we couldn't sleep, the mornings he made pancakes just to see me smile. But now, all I saw were ghosts of promises that never meant anything. In our bedroom, I found something that made me stop in my tracks. On the dresser sat a photograph, one of our wedding day. We looked so happy back then. Innocent, naive, utterly unaware of what lay ahead. For a brief second, I felt tears sting my eyes, but I wiped them away. "No more crying over someone who never deserved me," I whispered. I picked up the frame, turned it face down, and walked out. When I got home that evening, I got a call from Daniel. His name flashed on the screen, and for a moment I hesitated. My hands trembled slightly, but I answered. "Rebecca," his voice came through, low, intense. "I came home today and there were people there, strangers, moving things. What is this?" I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. "That's called moving out, Daniel. I sold the house." There was a long silence, then I heard him exhale sharply. You can't be serious. You sold our home? Our home? I almost laughed. The one you and your new family decided to occupy? The one I built with my savings and inherited from my parents? Yes, that one. I sold it. He raised his voice slightly, trying to sound authoritative. You had no right to do that without talking to me first. I smirked to myself. Actually, I had every right. You see, Daniel, your name might have been on the mailbox, but not on the deed. He went quiet again, probably realizing I wasn't bluffing. I could almost hear his pride cracking. You're unbelievable, he muttered. Where am I supposed to go now? I don't know, I replied coldly. Maybe ask your new family. I'm sure they'd love to help you figure that out. I hung up before he could say another word. For the next few days, I expected him to show up, to yell or beg or try to twist the story around like he always did. But he didn't. Instead, I heard from a mutual friend that he and that woman, her name was Mia, had been staying in a small rental apartment across town. Apparently, her parents weren't too happy about being embarrassed by the sudden move. Good. Let them feel a fraction of the humiliation I went through. Still, part of me couldn't help wondering, did he regret it? Did he ever look at the empty spaces where we once shared a life and realize what he'd thrown away? One evening, I got my answer. It was raining, the kind of heavy rain that makes the world go quiet. I was sitting on my sister's porch, a blanket over my shoulders, lost in thought, when headlights flashed across the driveway. A car door slammed, and before I could react, Daniel was standing there, drenched and desperate. Rebecca, he said, breathless, we need to talk. I stared at him coldly. You've said enough, Daniel. There's nothing left to discuss. Please, he insisted, just hear me out. Reluctantly, I stood under the porch light, crossing my arms. Fine, 5 minutes. He looked thinner, exhausted, not the confident man I once knew. I made a mistake, he said, his voice cracking slightly. I thought I wanted something new, something exciting, but I was wrong. She's not who I thought she was. None of them are. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, so now you realize that. I was stupid, he continued. I threw away the best thing in my life. Rebecca, I raised a hand, cutting him off. Stop. You don't get to do this. You don't get to stand here and pretend that all it takes is an apology to erase what you did. He looked down, ashamed. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, I said quietly, over and over again. You didn't just cheat on me, Daniel. You disrespected me. You brought her into my home, you made me question my worth, and now you expect me to forget all of that because you regret it? He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The rain poured harder, dripping from his hair, soaking his clothes, but he just stood there, defeated. I took a deep breath and said, I'm done, Daniel. You made your choice. Now live with it. He looked at me one last time, his eyes full of something I couldn't quite name. Sorrow, maybe, or guilt. Then turned and walked back to his car. As I watched his taillights disappear into the night, a strange calmness settled over me. For the first time, I didn't feel angry or broken. I felt empowered. In the days that followed, I started to rebuild my life, slowly but surely. I found a small apartment near the city center, got a new job, and started journaling again, something I hadn't done since before my marriage. Writing helped me heal, piece by piece. One afternoon, as I unpacked boxes in my new living room, I found an old letter from my mother tucked inside a photo album. It said, Never let anyone make you feel small in a life you built with your own hands. When someone takes advantage of your kindness, don't fight to be understood. Fight to be free. I smiled, tears forming in my eyes. It was like she knew. From that day, I promised myself I'd never lose my voice again. I'd never let anyone make me doubt my worth or silence my instincts. The house was gone, the marriage was over, but I was still here, stronger, wiser, and ready to start over. And sometimes that's the most beautiful kind of revenge, living happily without the people who thought you couldn't. The days after Daniel's visit passed quietly, almost too quietly. I thought that after that night he'd finally let me be. I was wrong. A week later, I came home from work and found a letter slipped under my apartment door. No name, no return address. Just my name written in handwriting I knew too well. My stomach twisted as I picked it up. Daniel. For a long time, I just stared at it, my heart thudding in my chest. A part of me wanted to tear it apart right then and there. Another part, the foolish part that once believed in him, wanted to know what he could possibly say now. Finally, I sat down, took a deep breath, and opened it. Rebecca, you might hate me, and I deserve that. But please, just hear me out. I lost everything. Not just the house, but the respect of everyone I care about. Mia's family turned on me when the money dried up. They used me, and now they're gone. I don't have anyone left. I'm asking for a chance to talk, not to beg you back, but to apologize properly. The letter ended with a line that made me pause. I'll be waiting where we first met. That was the old cafe near the river. The one where I spilled coffee on him years ago, and he'd laughed instead of getting angry. For a second, I almost smiled at the memory, but then I remembered how that laughter turned into lies, and the warmth turned to poison. I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer. I wasn't sure if I wanted to see him again, but something deep inside told me I needed closure. Not for him, but for myself. The next afternoon I went. The cafe hadn't changed much. Same wooden tables, same soft jazz music playing in the background, same quiet hum of people talking. Daniel sat by the window, wearing a dark coat, his face thinner than I remembered. When he saw me, his expression softened, almost relieved. Rebecca, he said, standing, you came. I nodded and sat across from him. Make it quick. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know there's nothing I can say to fix what I did. I ruined everything. I thought I was chasing happiness, but all I did was destroy the only person who ever cared about me. His voice cracked, and for the first time I saw genuine regret in his eyes. It didn't undo the pain, but it struck something inside me. A bittersweet ache of what once was. I'm not here for apologies, I said softly. I'm here to understand why. Why humiliate me like that? Why bring her into our home? He looked down, ashamed. Because I was weak. I wanted to feel wanted, admired, like I still mattered. When Mia came along, she made me feel that way. But it wasn't real. It was all for what I could give her. The house, the comfort, the stability. When I had nothing left, she disappeared. I stayed silent for a moment, watching him. He looked small. Not the man I once loved. Not the man who broke me. Just lost. I hope you find peace someday, Daniel. But that peace won't come from me. He nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping. "You really don't have any space in your heart left for me, do you?" "No," I said firmly. "I have space for myself now." I stood up and walked out. For the first time, I didn't look back. When I got home, I felt lighter, like I had finally shut a door that had been left open for too long. But I had no idea that was only the beginning of what would come next. A few days later, my phone rang again. It was Mia. Her voice was trembling. "Rebecca, I need to talk to you. It's about Daniel." I froze. "What about him?" She hesitated, then whispered, He's in the hospital. He tried to..." Her voice broke off. "He tried to take his own life." I sat down, my heart racing. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, sadness, confusion. Despite everything he'd done, I couldn't help feeling a pang of guilt. At the hospital, the sterile smell of disinfectant filled the air. Daniel was lying there, pale and weak. When he saw me, his lips curved into a faint, tired smile. "You came," he said quietly. I sat beside him, uncertain. "Why, Daniel? Why do this?" He looked at the ceiling. "Because I had nothing left. I lost my home, my dignity, my family, and you. The guilt ate me alive." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound between us. Finally, I said, "Daniel, what you did destroyed me, but ending your life won't fix that. You have to live with your choices and learn from them." Tears welled in his eyes. "You're a better person than I'll ever be." I shook my head. "No, Daniel. I just learned that forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone back in. It means freeing yourself from their hold." He nodded weakly. "I'm sorry, Rebecca, for everything." I stood, looked at him one last time, and whispered, "Goodbye, Daniel." As I walked out of the hospital, the sun broke through the clouds, its light warm against my face. It felt symbolic, like the end of a long, stormy night. In the weeks that followed, I poured my focus into rebuilding my life again. I started a small business selling home decor items, something I always dreamed of doing but never had the courage to try. Slowly, orders started coming in and my confidence grew. Every piece I sold felt like reclaiming a part of myself. Every painting, every candle, every design was a reminder that I could create beauty even from pain. One evening, I received a letter. This time not from Daniel, but from a lawyer. It turned out that after selling the house, I was entitled to a portion of an old investment Daniel had forgotten about. I laughed softly. "The universe has a strange sense of humor," I said to myself. I used that money to buy a cozy cottage near the beach. Nothing extravagant, but mine. Truly mine. The first night I moved in, I stood by the window watching the waves crash against the shore. The air smelled of salt and new beginnings. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the lessons. And as the moonlight glimmered on the water, I realized something important. Sometimes losing everything isn't the end. Sometimes it's the start of becoming who you were meant to be all along. Months later, I heard from a friend that Daniel had moved to another state, working quietly as a mechanic, trying to start over. I didn't feel bitterness, only peace. He was finally out of my story, and I was finally living mine. That night, I lit a candle by my window and whispered, Thank you for breaking me to pieces, Daniel, because in the pieces, I found my strength. Then I smiled to myself, truly smiled, for the first time in years. The past had finally released me. The house was gone. The pain had faded. And Rebecca, the woman who once lost everything, had finally come home to herself.